Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with your host, Christina Nitchman.
This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our guest today, Lieutenant Colonel Col Sorenson, retired Air Force fighter pilot. Daren has flown everything from Cessnas to supersonic F-15E Strike Eagle fighter jets. He is also a motivational speaker, appearing at local high schools and veterans events, speaking about his achievements and abilities to overcome adversity in his life and to fulfill his childhood dreams. Today, Daren shares his journey and what it takes to achieve success. Find out more about Daren at Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Daren Sorenson, DarenSorenson. Hi, Daren. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you this evening?
Great, Christina. Hi, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm excited to have you out for our 4th annual Aviation Month. It was Winty that introduced us. He is our official sponsor this month, and I'm very blessed that he introduced us. And you have an exciting past. You are a former U.S. Air Force fighter pilot, and you're going to share a little bit about your background and what launched you into the world of aviation. And what was the initial bug that got you into the aviation world?
Well, my parents would tell you that I've had it pretty much since birth, but it does go back, honestly, about just as far as I can remember. I have an older brother, Mark Sorenson, who is also a pilot, and we've got pictures back from we are just 3 and 4 and 5 years old of just playing with airplanes, and you can tell from even that age we've already kind of got the bug, and so it really dates back as far as I can remember. It's just been one of those things that's kind of in your DNA. And, I'll never forget when my parents took us to our first air show. And, you hear about air shows a lot, and everyone's probably been to one, but I distinctly remember my first one. And I was about 4 years old, and I grew up in the Midwest. And we went to the air show in a small town of Carbondale, Illinois, in the southern part of the state. And we drove over there from Missouri, where I grew up, and specifically to see the Blue Angels fly. And I'll just never forget that show. I remember them just being so loud and so low and so fast, and they came over my head. And really from that moment on, I've just always just kind of had that passion that was what I wanted to do. And that's where I wanted to take my flying passion. And I really just went with that my whole life. I grew up and my brother and I both got our private pilot's license when we were in high school. So it was kind of the thing we wanted to do on our 17th birthday. As much as most teenagers wanted to get their driver's license, my brother and I wanted to fly airplanes. And I'll never also forget the first time where I was able to actually go up in an aircraft. I just distinctly remember the view and the awe of defying gravity, and just thinking that, I was so young, but I thought, this is what birds must feel like, to be able to just fly. And that feeling of just defying gravity and being able to see the world from a different viewpoint that I'd never seen before just stayed with me. And I still have it today. I still feel the same way about it. I still feel that same passion, that same love. And when I go up and fly, you look down at the earth for all its glory, and it gives you just such a humbling experience that you feel so fortunate to be able to do. And it's, and it's something that I've always enjoyed and always wanted to share with other people. So, it continues to this day. And I was fortunate enough to be able to, take that passion and that love and turn it into a career, which culminated in 20 years in the Air Force as a fighter pilot. So I was very blessed to be able to do that.
Wow, that is quite a journey there. and you had mentioned your first experience at the air show and seeing the Blue Angels. And I recall the first time I saw them, it was probably the same year I took my very first flight. And they did this little thing where they're all in a group, and then one of them snuck out behind us and went really low over the beach behind our heads. And we all died to the ground because it scared the stuff out of us. And
Yeah, that's one of the favorite parts of the air shows that I've been to. Those are always good.
Yeah, so I think it's part of their routine, and I think they get a big jolly out of it. But it was quite an experience, and I can totally see where you're coming from. And I'm guessing from what you're saying, not only the view and perspective you get of how humbling it is to be in the air, but also you're getting the feel of the three dimensions, which you just don't get walking on the ground.
No, you really don't. And it, like I said, it gives you such a amazing perspective on life and things bigger than aviation. You look down and I've flown as high as 50,000 feet in the F-15, and you get up to that altitude and, the sky starts to look a lot darker and you start to see the curvature of the earth and you really start to feel like, wow, this must be what it's like to go up even higher and to be an astronaut. And it even makes you feel even smaller and more humble. And that three-dimension aspect of aviation is really a blessing that, you just can't appreciate as you're walking around on the ground. Yeah. And just finishing up on the air shows, I my whole life, since the time that I saw those Blue Angels as a child, probably at 4 years old, one of my goals had been for a long time I thought would be a culmination of my flying career would be maybe to be on the Thunderbirds. And as I grew older and actually went into the Air Force, I actually changed my mind and decided that wasn't the route that I wanted to go. And just because my career was kind of going off in a slightly different avenue. But I did still want to do it. And so it stayed on my bucket list the entire time that I was on active duty. And at about my 18th year in the Air Force, I finally got to fly with the Thunderbirds. And I got to fly at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, and we did a full air show practice routine. So I finally got to live out my childhood dream of being in the air show and being a Thunderbird and got to see it from their point of view. And that will always be one of the highlights of my Air Force career, was getting to actually fly with the Thunderbirds. And that's a treasure.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, what is when you're flying as a Thunderbird, is there much different to your normal everyday flying the F-15 yourself when you're flying? I mean, is there differences between the two? I mean, I guess they have a routine and you maybe don't in your everyday flying path. Whatever some of the differences.
Well, it is a show, and it's set up to be very, very entertaining. But the formations and the maneuvers that they fly in any of the demonstration teams, whether it be the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds or any of the military teams, are really just an extension of the standard formations that we teach all of the pilots. And so the formation flying and the maneuvers are really not that foreign to a everyday pilot in the Air Force. They just take them kind of to the next level and put all those together in a very entertaining show for the crowds. But it was it also did enlighten me, and you gain a new level of respect for the precision that and the practice that's required to put on those shows. A lot of people don't realize that they train for about 6 months straight before their first show of every year, and they practice sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. And it really is, when you look at pilot proficiency, it really does kind of culminate to say that your stick and rudder, your hand skills, your eye-hand coordination, really that's one of the highest levels of pilot skill that I've seen is being able to fly that show, that precise, day in and day out. It's really very respectful what they do.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen them, and both the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels, and I'm like, they look like they're inches from each other.
They are.
Really?
That's the brilliant thing. Oh yeah. Wow. I've got YouTube video of them, and it's from my seat, and it is really amazing because they are just inches apart.
Wow. And so the first time you saw the Blue Angels, what propelled you to join the Air Force and not the Navy per se? Was it just, it just worked out that way, or?
Yeah, there's a little bias there towards the Air Force, and honestly, it had more to do with the type of aircraft. So I grew up in the Midwest, south of St. Louis, in a town called Cape Girardeau. And for us, going to St. Louis was the big city. And it just so happened that McDonnell Douglas, and now Boeing, the manufacturer of their line of fighter aircraft, was based there. And that's where their plant was. And so we would see those aircraft type flying over our house, and we could go out and watch them at the airport. And so when I was growing up and very influential, I became quite biased to those types of aircraft. Mm-hmm. And actually growing up, the F-4 Phantom was kind of in its prime, and I got very partial to that aircraft. And I was like, wow, if I could fly any plane, that's the one I want to fly. I had a lot of respect for that. And then the F-15 came out, and I was like, wow, if I thought the F-4 was cool, the F-15 is really just the catch me out. And so I fell in love with that. Mm. And right about the time that I was graduating from high school, I saw a poster that McDonnell Douglas had put out, and it said F-15E Strike Eagle, and it showed the combination of the two best aircraft I'd ever seen in my entire life, which was the F-15 and the F-4. And it had this huge array of weapons that this brand new aircraft could drop. And I was like, now that's what I want to do. And so for about the next 10 years, that became my mission in life, was to somehow, and only the Air Force was flying that aircraft. So that was kind of how I became very partial to the Air Force. I said, that's what I want to do. And come heck or high water, that's my dream airplane.
Wow. And I've had quite a few conversations with folks, both young, old, and such, who've had a admiration for the Air Force or flying in the Air Force or Navy, and they want to go that direction. What would you say for some young person who's in the position where they could possibly join the Air Force or Navy? What skills or things should they be looking out to get ready so they can be well prepared for something like that?
Well, the Air Force, and I'm pretty confident that all the services do a very good job of screening their individuals and letting them know, what type of skills that they're looking for. They want a very well-rounded candidate. There's, grades are a big factor. So I always tell high school students when I go to speak at high schools that, your grades have got to be your number one priority, but they don't want that to be the only thing. They want you very well-rounded as well. They look for a lot of leadership qualities in teenagers as they're growing up, which is also very important. But then they also look for just the bread and butter, eye-hand coordination type of thing. So they have a lot of battery of tests that they want you to go through to really be able to see if what your reaction times are, because there is a high degree of skill that's required, and you have to be able to think very quickly on your feet, be very dynamic, and have very good eye-hand coordination. Ironically, we look at a lot of, I was kind of a gamer, if you will, growing up, and I looked at a lot of the games. My parents always said I was spending too much time playing video games, but one of the things that it did do was it developed kind of some eye-hand coordination. And luckily, that translated for me into some flying skills and some stick and rudder skills in the airplane. And when I took the battery test for the Air Force, I scored very well. So, but they don't want someone who's just good in one thing. They're looking for a broad range of skills and abilities. But the other thing that I realized is, when I met a bunch of my peers, because I was very intimidated going to pilot training. I wasn't quite sure what the other pilots would be like. I knew at the time a lot of people had a lot of flying time. They had a lot of ratings, and it's very competitive. And you're not, you've never been in that situation before, so you're not quite sure how you stack up against other people. Because normally in a civilian training program, it's just you and your instructor, so you don't get a lot of direct feedback on how you would do against a wide range of candidates. And it's just one of those things where I realized that another huge factor is just your level of dedication and your willpower and your willingness to put the effort in. And just like any other sport or skill or something else that you would take on as a challenge, I want to make sure people know that if you want it, you'll probably achieve it. And I was nothing special in high school. I was nothing special in my, civilian private pilot's license. My grades weren't, I wasn't a 4.0 student. I wasn't the top of my class. But one of the things that I do believe that allowed me to achieve the things that I was able to do was that I was willing to put in the effort, and that can overcome a lot of other things. And so I tell you don't have to be the number one person. You don't have to be the fastest guy in your class, but you have to want it as bad as anyone else does. And that's really, I think, what gets a lot of people through.
Well, that is some awesome advice there. Through all of your experiences, both as a pilot before you got into the Air Force and then afterward, is there any exciting moment or personal experiences where lift, weight, thrust, and drag were involved that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, there's so many. I think back and I've been so fortunate to be flying for over 25 years and thousands of hours and the variety of aircraft that I've flown. The Eagle was the pinnacle, obviously, and it just defies physics with its ability to maneuver and its massive amounts of thrust. And it was always a pleasure to take someone up who was not a pilot or not, an aircrew member who didn't fly on a normal basis and just let them experience a little bit of what we got to experience on a day-to-day basis as a pilot in the Air Force. And a lot of people have a totally different perception of what it's like to be a pilot in the Air Force or what it was like to be a fighter pilot and what those demands are. And you quickly can shatter those perceptions if they're not accurate and show them how demanding it is physically, how challenging it is. And what it really takes to be a successful fighter pilot. And those were always very enjoyable missions to go because the look on their face when they got to experience some of what that jet could do are priceless moments. And the other thing that really sticks out to me is just life-changing moments that I'll never forget and always appreciate is the mission that we got to do. And that jet was created for a reason. It was created as a war machine to take into combat, and to do what our military and our government and our nation needed it to do. And a lot of my time in combat was spent supporting Americans and friendly ground forces that were in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I was fortunate enough to be in a couple of situations where I was in the right place at the right time, and I got to use all the capabilities of that aircraft and my weapon system to get some Americans, some soldiers out of some very bad predicaments. And that I can only thank, the good Lord and the makers of the aircraft at McDonnell Douglas and Boeing, who allowed us to put all those things in the right place at the right time. And those are really the memories that will stick with me for a lifetime.
Wow. That sounds amazing when you were taking people up. So you would usually take, I would think, media and certain people within the military up for a ride. What would be the occasions that you would bring someone up who wasn't a pilot?
We did do some media flights. For example, when I was at the weapons school, we took a local news anchor for a media flight who was doing a story on the Air Force Weapons School, which I was a commander at and an instructor at, which is the Air Force version of Top Gun. And so they were doing a multi-day piece on the weapons school, which had never been done before. And so at the culmination of that story, the news anchor got to actually fly in my back seat. And so we went out and we did a lot of simulated training missions and stuff like that, which was one of my favorite media flights of all time.
And as far as being out there and doing missions, are the birds today used for dogfighting, or is that really the old-time planes? Can these new planes do dogfighting, or is it more just adding support and ground fire when necessary?
They do it all. There's a lot of misperceptions about what type of capabilities are needed in today's day and age. There's a lot of misperceptions about new, latest and greatest fifth generation jets that have stealth capabilities, and we've been learning lessons in this topic for years and years that date back to Vietnam or even before, and the dogfighting and aerial combat in fighter jets is much like a chess match. And for every move, there's a counter move. And for every capability, there's a counter capability. And the near peer adversaries out there that are also developing the same capabilities have also been developing capabilities that counter and negate the things that we can do. And a lot of times you'll find is that they null each other out. And so the only thing that you might be left with in certain situations are good old-fashioned dogfighting skills. And your only weapon might be just the good old-fashioned gun. And so that's why you see it continue to be a required weapon even in this decade where we have such other advanced technologies. And it's really hard to kind of grasp that concept unless you live it and breathe it and study it. Over the years, we kind of develop the PhD level understanding of dogfighting and how to fight an air war. And there's just some things you don't ever want to leave home without. For a soldier, it might be a good old fashioned knife or a bayonet or a pistol or a handgun. And you're like, well, why would you need that when you have such big 50 caliber sniper rifles and stuff like that? And it's like, and why would we still teach hand-to-hand combat? When you go, hey, why do the Marines still teach hand-to-hand combat? Because sometimes it comes down to that. And so we have the same philosophy when it comes to dogfighting in the air.
Wow, that's fascinating. I wondered about that because I've seen World War II films and I've seen the older birds. I wondered how these newer fighter planes, if they still did the same sort of fighting as the older aircrafts.
We absolutely do, and it's it's a big part of our training and our skill sets that we're ready to employ with at any time.
So, Daren, through all of your experiences as a pilot and a human being up to this point, what would you say has been your greatest lesson learned?
In the realm of aviation, I think this applies to all pilots, and it doesn't really matter what you fly, but I consistently think we relearn the lesson that you have to respect Mother Nature. And it really doesn't matter what you're flying, how big or how small. You can't scoff Mother Nature, and unfortunately, you continue to see examples of people who think that whether it's their skill or their airplane or some technology that allows them to cut corners and push the envelope a little too close. But every once in a while, Mother Nature is going to come back and tell you pretty sternly that you're not going to win that one. And I've unfortunately lost a few friends that I've known through crashes due to severe type weather issues. And it's one of those things that I keep trying to teach everybody that I'm around is that you absolutely have to respect it, and it just doesn't matter if you're in a Cessna 152 or a 747. You can lose any day.
Wow, I really like that point there. I am a student pilot. My actual partner and boyfriend is a 22-year pilot, commercial pilot, and we fly often. And throughout the years of flying together, I've seen what weather can do, and it's given me a great, tremendous amount of respect for weather. When you're on the ground, walking around day to day, you don't think about it if it gets a bit yicky outside or stormy. But when you're flying about, you do pay it a bit of mind if you want to, live to see another day.
That's very true and good advice.
So tell me, what is on your horizon? Now you are at the moment not working with the U.S. Air Force. What are your plans for aviation or your career going forward?
Well, I am, I'm in a different phase of my life, and, it's one that I'm really enjoying right now. I have a teenage son who is, reminds me so much of myself. I mean, he also has this love of aviation. He's been flying with me privately since he was probably 4 or 5 years old as well. And, we're talking right now about two things. We're talking about him getting his student driver's permit, and we're talking about him taking flying lessons. So, one of my near-term goals is to be able to teach him how to fly. and and be his CFI, and hopefully see him successfully get his private pilot's license in the next couple of years. And then something else that we've also, my brother and I have done for many years is we've been involved in EAA's Young Eagle program, and we have taken, between the two of us, hundreds of kids up for their first flight, and I love doing that. I want to keep doing that, and another passion that I have is to transition into the warbird community. And get involved in volunteering some of my time to keep some of the beautiful warbirds flying from our past. I think that's an amazing part of our history that that it deserves, our time and effort to make sure that those planes can continue to fly and show up at air shows, and so we can remember where our aircraft came from, because they've advanced so far, in not a lot of years. Respectively, and it's just a beautiful thing. I've fallen in love with everything back to the very first aircraft that we've ever seen, so I would be honored to just be able to volunteer my time and keep some of those beautiful planes flying.
Wow, have you gotten the chance to fly a P-51 Mustang?
It's a great story. That's also on my bucket list, and I got really, really close one day. I had gotten kind of a ride arranged for me as a birthday present several years ago, and we made it all the way to the end of the runway. And I'm thinking, hot damn! After 2 decades, my bucket list, my dream aircraft, my flight, in a P-51 was finally going to come true. And we ended up having to come back and not fly because of a hydraulic problem. So that's still on my list. I've got my eye on a couple, and I've got kind of a plan to work my way up actually into the front seat of one. So I'm going to be building some T6 time, and then hopefully eventually transition in a couple of years to the P-51. So through my warbird connection. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I will go down with many and say that that's the most awesome, beautiful fighter aircraft that's ever been made. It's just flawless in my opinion.
I agree. Is the T6 was it usually used before you transitioned to a P-51 in the past?
Yeah, the T6 is a great trainer aircraft. It's what we used as a primary trainer in the World War II era, and it still reigns true today. It's great for people to get some tailwheel time and to learn the basics before they transition to something as powerful as the P-51.
Wow, that's fabulous. Well, I know you're going to get it done off your bucket list. I'm so grateful you came out to join us today to share your wonderful story and your amazing journey. Before we head on out, is there any last words you'd like to leave with our audience and any pilots out there?
I'm more than happy to talk with anyone who's interested in aviation. I get random messages through social media and stuff from anyone. I've had people flying from out of town that wanted me to talk to them about how they can, maybe get into the military or something. But I absolutely encourage people to reach out if they have any questions in any way that I could possibly help them. I'm pretty much available through any social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. I have a lot of fun with that. We have a lot of good conversations. We share a lot of good pictures, and it's a great community. So I would say don't hesitate if you have any questions that you think I could answer or help out with. I'd be more than happy to do so.
Great. And they can find you at Facebook at Daren Sorenson, which would be DarenSorenson, correct?
That is correct. And the same thing, my Twitter account is the same. It's the first name, last name, as well as Instagram and just anywhere else. So if you Google me, you'll find me with the correct spelling.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you again, Daren, for coming to Savvy Central Radio and joining us for our 4th annual Aviation Month.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's been my honor to talk to you.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out more about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718 area code 713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.